It's pretty clear that we are living through a dramatic revolution in warfare brought about by changes in technology. Classic air power, manned by human beings, is increasingly being displaced by pilotless drones and ballistic missiles. This has led to surprising developments as seemingly weaker powers like Ukraine and Iran have been able to stymie larger ones like Russia and the United States. Over the last several weeks, the mainstream media has finally begun to pick up on the fact that Ukraine has been doing much better on the battlefield with Russia, and that the war may at long last be turning in its favor. Some of the claims, however, about the underlying technological revolution have been exaggerated, and we need to understand the precise ways in which warfare has been changing. The first thing to note is that air power by itself has always had great difficulties in achieving political objectives, something aptly demonstrated by the ongoing Iran war and Operation Epic Fury. What we want to investigate here is how air power affects the land battle, which remains the main way in which war influences political outcomes. In this realm, there are three main domains in which it has been used historically. The first is strategic, the destruction of large targets deep in the enemy rear that have important roles in sustaining the enemy's war effort, like factories, railroad junctions, power grids, and the like. The second use of air power is operational, hitting military targets closer to the battlefield, perhaps 10 to 100 kilometers behind the front lines, including supply lines, air defenses, troops massing for an attack, communications facilities, command posts, barracks, or POL storage depots that are needed by mobile armed forces. Such attacks are critical in shaping the land battle by disrupting communications and resupply. The third mission is close air support, that is, attacking enemy forces on the front lines that are actively engaged in battle. The first and the third of these, strategic and close air support, have already been greatly impacted by the new technologies, and we are about to witness changes in the second category, the operational one. So, let's see what recent wars have demonstrated. A lot of recent media coverage concerns the Ukrainian campaign of long-range drone strikes that have been targeted against Russian oil and gas facilities. In some cases, these are thousands of kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Observers have noted the lack of military hardware at this year's Russian May 8th Victory Day celebration in Red Square for fear of Ukrainian strikes during the ceremony, and Vladimir Putin's reported fear of assassination by drone. Technology has made a huge difference in this realm. During the Second World War, the British Bomber Command and the U.S. 8th Air Force attempted to hit strategic targets like ball bearing factories in Germany. But Nazi air defenses forced bombers to fly at night when their accuracy was really atrocious. This led to the Allied decision to indiscriminately bomb urban civilian targets, leading to the flattening of cities like Dresden, Hamburg, and Tokyo, with accompanying civilian casualties in the hundreds of thousands. Despite armchair strategizing by people like Lindsey Graham, these kinds of civilian attacks are both morally repugnant and have had a poor track record in changing the political calculations of the targeted countries. The Russians, after all, have been hitting Ukrainian civilian targets throughout the war, hospitals, schools, and the like, and they've made life miserable for many of its citizens, but they have not brought about the country's capitulation. It's in the realm of close air support that drone technology has had the most revolutionary impacts. This mission has historically been very difficult to carry out. Until the advent of precision-guided munitions in the late 20th century, like the Maverick missile or the guided GBU-10 and 12 bombs, it was hard to hit point targets from the air. Even so, so-called low and slow aircraft like the AC-130 gunship or the beloved A-10 Warthog were vulnerable to air defenses and ran the risk of committing fratricide, that is, when aircraft would mistakenly hit a friendly target. Inexpensive FPV drones, which are now being produced by Ukraine in the millions per year, have changed this calculus completely. Classic combined arms maneuver warfare, that is, rapid breakthroughs by armored vehicles that can drive deep into the enemy rear, cut supply lines, and capture territory, has been made virtually impossible. FPV drones have made the battlefield completely visible. They can see everything, and they can hit everything that they can see, not just tanks or surface-to-air missile batteries, but individual foot soldiers. FPV drones are not, at least for now, vulnerable to modern air defenses and are much more precise than earlier kinds of munitions. The one mission that remains the domain of air power is the operational one, beginning with the establishment of air superiority in the early stages of a campaign. By neutralizing surface-to-air missile batteries and destroying the enemy's aircraft, either on the ground or in the air, airplanes remain very useful. Airplanes are also necessary for certain kinds of strategic missions, such as delivering heavy so-called bunker buster bombs, like those used against the Fordow enrichment plant last summer. But operational missions are now being transformed as well. Early in the war, in 2022 and 23, the Ukrainians used American HIMARS rockets with ranges of that were somewhere in the tens to low hundreds of kilometers, and they used them to great effect. While these have been largely neutralized by Russian countermeasures, the Ukrainians are developing a new generation of drones built in Ukraine and rockets that can strike at operational targets. We've seen this unfolding as we speak in Russian-occupied Crimea. The Ukrainians have been systematically taking out Russian air defenses with medium-range drones and missiles. The peninsula has very constricted supply lines with a single road and rail connection through the narrow isthmus to the north and the Kerch Strait Bridge connecting Crimea to the Russian mainland to the east. The Ukrainians have reportedly now controlled the isthmus route from the air and have been attacking the bridge repeatedly over the past 3 years. Under these circumstances, it would not be at all surprising if the Russian command decided at some point in the coming year that their position in Crimea was untenable and began to withdraw forces there, just as it has already withdrawn the bulk of its navy. Such a withdrawal would, of course, mean an enormous political defeat for Vladimir Putin. However, air power is not obsolete yet. Success in war still depends on layered defenses and systems that are capable of operating within each of the layers. In judging the future of drones versus legacy air power, however, the question is not simply one of pure capabilities, since air power will still remain superior in certain operational and strategic missions. Rather, the issue is one of relative cost. A Patriot missile can shoot down a Shahed drone, but the Patriot costs north of $4 million, while the Shahed is produced for less than $40,000 and in much larger quantities. In the future, countries like Ukraine will be able to unleash swarms of low-cost drones controlled autonomously by AI systems. Operation Epic Fury in the Middle East has demonstrated that the sophisticated air defenses provided America's friends in the Gulf have been unable to prevent serious damage to their facilities and American air bases, for that matter, from Iran's drones and missiles. This balance of capabilities will persist until someone comes up with a cheap and effective anti-drone system. Many countries and companies are working on that today, but we're not there yet. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to my Frankly Fukuyama YouTube channel. You can also see the written version of this video on my Frankly Fukuyama blog, which is on American Purpose, part of the Persuasion family of online magazines, and I encourage you to subscribe to any and all of these. Thanks very much for listening.